ATP, what it do with your boy Clay Rain? Back at you guys with another one. Yeah, so look, man, like the crescendo is in the books, right? Beterbiev, Bivol 2, and the full card is in the books. We made it. Let's talk about it. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I want to go ahead and shout out to all my subscribers, all my new subscribers. Welcome to the family. Everyone who's been here supporting the channel, couldn't do it without you guys. And of course, if this is your first time tapping into the content, you guys already know. Take your time to go ahead right now and go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Hit your bell icons as well, so you are getting alerts when all this content is dropping. So look, like I said, it's in the books. Beterbiev Bivol 2 is in the books. What a card. Up and down, you know, we had some what I would consider somewhat upsets, fighters who I thought would show up in certain ways and just didn't, right? And we had a very early stoppage. We'll talk about that and then what I think about that at this point. And of course, we got a decision right now, a new undisputed light heavyweight champion in Dmitry Bivol. We'll break that down as well. What a great fight. What a cerebral fight that turned out to be. Chess, not checkers. We'll talk about what looked good, what didn't look good, what did Bivol do, what was a difference maker in this fight, who made the adjustments, how did both fighters look? I gotta tell you, both fighters came in looking better than they did the last time. But look, man, it's always chess, it's never checkers when you're dealing with this high level of boxing pedigree. We're gonna break that down, right? We'll get into the main card and break it down one fight at a time. Just give you a little quick recap of what happened on the card, and more importantly, probably what we're going to be expecting in the future, what I think we should be expecting in the future as well, with Turki Al-Sheikh as planned with all these fighters. These fights, for the most part, were very significant in the divisions that the fights were happening in. A lot of changes happened based on the results of these fights, as far as I'm concerned, and different fighters have different vested interests in what the results were. We'll move it around, see where it lands. Be patient with me. This one shouldn't take too long, but it won't be short, right? We got a lot of fights to break down. Let's start off with the first card, the main card that broke out, which was Callum Smith and Joshua Buatsi. Listen, going into the fight, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, right? Going into the fight, I picked Joshua Buatsi to go ahead and take this win, right? That's what I thought was gonna happen. Joshua Buatsi being the younger fighter, the guy who seems like he was trying to carry some momentum into putting himself in a conversation of being in the big championship fights with the winner of Artur Beterbiev or Dmitry Bivol, or even a David Benavidez, who seems to have taken the weight class by storm. Buatsi was right there holding an interim WBO title, was going to fight Callum Smith. I thought Callum Smith had one foot out the door. I'm not going to lie to you. And for the most part, he might have, right? But Joshua Buatsi just didn't bring the game plan or the strategy that I thought would have got him there. Expecting him to try to make this fight a mid-range fight, smother the power of Callum Smith. We all know Callum Smith standing at a stature. What is Callum Smith's height? Let's talk about Callum Smith for a second. Callum Smith got to be sitting in what, like 6'3", 6'2"? Let's see here. 6'3"-ish, 2-ish. Let's see here. Okay, 6'3" with a 78-inch arm reach, right? Listen, guys, he's not a small light heavyweight. And with that reach and that height, you would have thought Joshua Buatsi would have came in the ring more so focused on, let me pull up Joshua Buatsi's stats here. You would have thought he was stepped in the ring with more of a mission of getting inside, making this a mid-range fight where Callum Smith wasn't going to be as effective, as much punching power, would have been able to smother that power a little bit, and of course get his own offense on the inside. I thought this was Callum Smith's time. I'll be honest with you. I mean, not Callum Smith. I thought this was Joshua Buatsi's time. I thought he was due for a stoppage at this point. His last 4 or 5 fights went to a decision. Last fight he had against Willie Hutchinson went to a decision. I figured the stage was big enough. The prize at the end of the tunnel, the light at the end of this tunnel, was going to be Joshua Buatsi either fighting a David Benavidez or maybe even getting himself involved with fighting for or his title even being upgraded, right? Depending on a decision that came from the Dmitry Bivol or Artur Beterbiev situation. He would have been next in line to either fight for an undisputed either fight for an undisputed or fight a fight that would get him to undisputed as far as David Benavidez is concerned. However you want to look at it, right? But look, that's not what ended up happening. Shout out to boxing. You know, the great thing about competitive boxing, the great thing about 50-50 fights and great matchmaking is you never know what's going to happen. Joshua Buatsi, in my opinion, I mean, just watching the fight, really wasted a lot of time with his mid-range game. He'd smother the power of Caleb Smith from time to time, make some things happen, but for the most part, initiating clinches that would end up with the referee separating them, resetting them back in the center of the ring, putting them back at the end of Caleb Smith's power punches. And this just put him in a position where he was getting clipped a lot. A great body campaign by Caleb Smith, hitting him up with multiple combination shots, hooks, uppercuts. I mean, you name it, hitting him with everything except for a literal kitchen sink at times. But Buatsi showing that he had a real iron beard, really weathered the storm, got hurt a couple times in the fight. I'll be honest with you, Buatsi had his moments where he hurt Caleb Smith, where I thought he should have capitalized on that. But for some reason or another, just wouldn't keep his foot off the gas, right? Just wouldn't keep his foot on the gas in those moments, would pull his foot off the gas, and it just ended up being what it was. Needless to say, Caleb Smith walks away with a unanimous decision, which I think was fair. I mean, there was a scorecard that was like 110, 119. I thought that scorecard was a little diabolic, but it is what it was, right? The right guy won the fight. It was a unanimous decision, and I think the judges got it right when it came to that. Okay, now walking into the next fight, we had Ishmael. Excuse me. Yes, I believe we had Ishmael Madrimov. No. Who the hell cares? Let's just go with Ishmael Madrimov and Virgil Ortiz, right? Great fight, man. I mean, we knew going into this that this was going to be fight of the night, quality fighting, right? Possibility, fight of the night candidate, right? Ishmael Madrimov coming off with a very competitive fight of Terrence Crawford, where he showed wrinkles to his game, showed his ability to adjust, showed his IQ. We knew that he was going to try his best to make this a very cerebral fight for the Virgil Ortiz, who's always been known to kind of come forward, a lot of power, quick, right? Good, decent jab, but never really seen Virgil Ortiz have to honestly adjust to anything going on in the ring. Him getting in his last fight with Serhii Bohachuk, which was also a fight of the year candidate, in my personal opinion, literally fight of the year. That's how I put it. But I'll say a candidate. Everybody has their own opinions. But coming off that fight, going 12 rounds for the first time, you guys know Virgil Ortiz had a perfect knockout ratio going into that fight with Serhii Bohachuk. But Serhii Bohachuk, just one of those resilient, tough Eastern European boxers who just brought the power and brought durability to the ring. A lot of people thought that Serhii Bohachuk won that fight with Virgil Ortiz. So expecting what? I knew that it was going to be two brand new fighters possibly being in the ring. When you have matches like that, 12-round fights like that are so grueling and so competitive, you're either going to get better from that or you're going to start to decline, right? I was going towards the side of getting better. These guys are both young guys trying to make a name for themselves in the 154-pound weight class division that you guys know, a legitimate hornet's nest, right? So Virgil Ortiz walking into this fight as a WBC interim title holder in this fight, was defending his title. The building was definitely supportive of Israel Madrimov, as this was an overseas fight. I mean, Virgil Ortiz had a couple of fans in there, but I don't think he's expecting to have the biggest support of the whole building. But we all understood that this was going to probably culminate to be a great fight. Another fight I got wrong, leaning towards Israel Madrimov to win this fight. Just thought that he brought more, like I said, wrinkles to his game, right? More tools, more ability to adjust and give Virgil Ortiz many different looks. And just as I thought it would, as far as the beginning of the match was concerned, Israel Madrimov was able to do that. The looks he was giving Virgil Ortiz, it took Virgil Ortiz a while to figure out how he was going to go ahead and solve this math problem called Israel Madrimov, as Israel was basically approaching the fight with the same strategy as he did fighting Terrence Crawford, real irky, jerky, right? Moving around, a lot of lateral movement, a lot of punches, turning Virgil Ortiz around, making Virgil Ortiz miss. And as I stated before, Virgil Ortiz's ability to adjust to all these different looks was going to make the biggest difference in this fight. That's what he did, ladies and gentlemen. I won't even lie to you. How do you get one of these irky jerky moving around fighters to stay still. You attack the body. And that's what Virgil did. You guys know Virgil Ortiz is one of the best body punchers, maybe the best body puncher in the 154-pound weight class division. So he did. He implemented that, took his time, a lot of poise, a lot of straight jabs to the body, a lot of straight right hands to the body, and any opportunity he had to capitalize off of Israel Madrimov choosing to engage or melee with him, he would generally win those exchanges. I would say Madrimov won maybe like the first 2 to 3 rounds, but ultimately after that, it became very competitive. You saw that Virgil Ortiz took the air out of Israel Madrimov's tires. I mean, he really just, that body campaign started to show up in spades in the mid to latter rounds when Israel Madrimov decided that the best thing he was going to do was kind of approach the fight the same way Serhii Bohachuk approached the fight, right? Just kind of a high guard, staying in front of Virgil Ortiz, which I think was a big mistake. Israel Madrimov just didn't invest in the body the way he probably should have, and ultimately Virgil Ortiz was able to take advantage of an Israel Madrimov who was very tired come the mid to later rounds, didn't really have the conditioning to keep that pace up with what he was doing with Terrence Crawford. When you combine the fact that Virgil Ortiz was investing in a body that way, just was sucking a lot of air, to be honest with you, by like the 6th, 7th round, just really was having a hard time keeping it together. Virgil Ortiz didn't get the stoppage, but did get a unanimous decision, or was that a unanimous decision? Hold on, let's see what that one. I think that was actually a majority split decision. Let's see how that fight ended up. I can't really remember off the top of my head. Let's see what happens here when I pull this up. Let's see here. Yes, winner of a unanimous decision. Very close fight. Once again, a weird scorecard. Kevin Parker scored it 117-111. I don't think it was that far apart. It was a way more competitive fight, but Kieran McCann and Barry Lindenman both Guido Cavalieri and Barry Lindman both scored it 115-113. I thought that was a fair score. Madrimov did make this fight competitive, but as I stated, really the campaign to the body that Virgil Ortiz put on Madrimov put him in a position where he just couldn't keep up the pace with all that lateral movement and the things, the different looks that he really probably needed to give Virgil Ortiz in order to continue to win rounds, right? He stole some rounds, stayed in the fight, never really just got dominated, but ultimately for the most part, by the time the rounds was over, Virgil Ortiz was coming up on top. Very, very effective with his campaign on Israel Madrimov. What do we see next for Israel Madrimov at this point? I mean, he's still up there, right? Still one of the best 154-pounders in the division, but more importantly, Virgil Ortiz sitting on that interim title, probably putting himself in position to be in line to fight a Sebastian Fundora. Now, Sebastian Fundora does have a fight laid up for the next month with Chordell Booker. Depending on the results of that fight, maybe Virgil Ortiz fights the winner of that fight. Let's not forget, we do have Xander Zayas and Serhii Bohachuk sitting in that WBC rankings that would love to get a shot at the title. I know Xander Zayas is number 1 in the WBO rankings. He's probably trying to get a fight with Sebastian Fundora or the Chordell Booker winner as well, being that Sebastian Fundora is a unified champion holding both belts. We'll have to see it, all depending on what Sebastian Fundora, with the results from Sebastian Fundora and Chordell Booker and who they choose to fight. But honestly, another fight that's right there that I'm sure people want to see, that'll be clamoring to see Serhii Bohachuk get another opportunity to fight Virgil Ortiz to get back his interim title. Like I said, when they fought the first time, a lot of people thought Serhii Bohachuk won that fight. So Virgil Ortiz doesn't seem to be the kind of person who turned out any smoke. If that opportunity with Sebastian Fundora isn't there, I'd assume he'd either take that fight with Serhii Bohachuk or maybe take some sort of what people might want to call a tune-up. If you guys know 154 like I do, there's no tune-ups in that division. But maybe it's Xander Zayas. Maybe he decides to give Xander Zayas an opportunity at becoming an interim champion if Xander Zayas is not able to go ahead and get a shot at the winner of Sebastian Fundora and Chordell Booker, right? But we'll keep an eye on that. We'll see how that develops. As far as from the Caleb Smith, Joshua Buatsi fight as well, not to go backwards, but just to say, now that Caleb Smith has gotten this unanimous decision over Joshua Buatsi, he's now holding a WBO interim title. I believe Caleb Smith is sitting at about 34 years old. This guy had one foot out the door with Artem after he lost to Artur Beterbiev. Now that he's a WBO champion, I'm sure he's not just trying to fight tune-ups. He's trying to make a statement, go ahead and make a run for the title. for the title at some point. You would think the next fight that would probably be on the list with him would probably be a David Benavidez, and I'll explain why that's more significant. Based on the results of the Dmitry Bivol Artur Beterbiev fight, right? But I think, Caleb Smith versus David Benavidez would be a great fight. I definitely would favor David Benavidez to win that fight, being that he loves to be mid-range. He loves to keep those fights close like that, and I think he could smother that power, Caleb Smith, and make him pay a lot. But Caleb Smith lets his hands go. I think it would be a great fight, right? I'm sure Turkey Al-Sheikh would love to put that fight together, put some money in David Benavidez's pocket, put some money in Caleb Smith's pocket, and do something great for boxing. It'd be awesome, right? Moving forward, we got Joshua Buatsi, Caleb Smith out the way. We've got Virgil Ortiz and Israel Madrimov out the way. Let's go into the fight of the night, in my opinion, that I thought was the most shocking fight for most people. But your boy did call it. I told you guys I thought that Ajit Kabayel was a special fighter, and he showed and proved that he was. So let's get into it. Ajit Kabayel versus Zhilei Zhang. Going into that fight, I saw that Zhilei Zhang weighed in the day before at 287 pounds. That's pretty slim for the Chinese heavyweight boxer. Showed me that he got into conditioning, right? Lost that weight. He understood that conditioning was going to play a large role in this fight, and he wanted to be able to go the long version of this fight if need be. Interested in the marathon, not so concerned about the race, but still understanding that Zhilei Zhang has never been the type of person to have the best tank. So the further the fight went down the line, you figure he would start going away after a while, right? I make a joke that Zhilei Zhang has a gas tank that's running at about 3 to 5 miles a gallon, right? Takes a lot of petrol to keep that big machine moving, but his best chance at keeping that conditioning was going to be coming in the best shape he could, and he did it. 287 pounds, very impressive. I could imagine he sacrificed a lot to being potentially one of the best shapes he's ever been in his heavyweight boxing career. Keep in mind, this guy is 41 years old, right? But coming on the other side of the ring was Ajit Kabayel. Now, let me say that Zhilei Zhang standing at about 6'6", around there, I believe. You got Ajit Kabayel coming at 6'3". Both these guys got the same arm reach at about 80 inches. And if you guys have watched Ajit Kabayel fight, he's really, really into campaigning with those body shots. And I told you guys, this year is going to be the year of the body snatchers. A good body campaign is making the biggest difference in a lot of these fights. And on this card, this showed up in multiple different fights, right? You saw Virgil Ortiz implement that against Israel Madrimov. Well, in this same fight, I was already expecting Ajit Kabayel to do it. The question was going to be whether or not he was going to be able to evade Zhilei Zhang's, arsenal of shots that he throws. He throws great combinations. He has a great straight right hand. And obviously what Zhilei Zhang is known for is for having that left hand, right? That'll put you out of there. So that was going to be Ajit Kabayel's really main assignment, was to go ahead and continue to apply pressure, attack the body of Zhilei Zhang, but at the same time evade those shots that will be coming back at him from Zhilei Zhang. Easier said than done. As the fight moves on, the first round, obviously a fresh Zhilei Zhang was able to let his hand go and do a lot of great things in there, keeping Ajit Kabayel at bay. And really just took that first round for all argument's sake. But the second round, Ajit Kabayel came out the way I thought he would. Just really focus on working on that body, hitting him up with plenty of body shots every chance he had. A couple times coming over the top with hooks and straight right hands directly down the middle. But ultimately, investing in the bank, right? Investing in that body work, planning on recouping on that investment later on in the fight. That's what I expected him to do. And ladies and gentlemen, ultimately, when it was all said and done, that's what he did, right? Now, Zhilei Zhang did have a moment when he caught Ajit Kabayel, I believe, with a left hand that did put him on his pockets. Hurt him too, to be honest with you. Not shocking at all. Ajit Kabayel was able to recover from that, stand up, and get right back on his campaign of attacking that body. And ultimately, I believe it was around the 5th or 6th round that it was just too much for Zhilei Zhang, right? Zhilei Zhang succumbs to a body campaign that put him down. He just wasn't able to deal with it. And Ajit Kabayel walks away with a great victory on a fighter who's never been stopped in Zhilei Zhang and has only lost to two great fighters in Filip Ergovic, one, and the second one being Joseph Parker. That's great, right? When you look at what Joseph Parker did tonight, when you look at who Filip Ergovic was at that time, an undefeated fighter who was on his own way to becoming a champion and end up losing it against taking his first loss against Daniel Dubois. Those were great wins on Zhilei Zhang's record. That translates into a great win for Ajit Kabayel, who's there to stop Zhilei Zhang. A lot of people couldn't imagine it happening, right? So Zhilei Zhang, what's next for him? Well, let's continue to talk about what else happens in the card, because I think there's a great fight lined up that could potentially involve Zhilei Zhang on a great payday and give him an opportunity to get right back in this conversation again, potentially, as far as being one of those top heavyweights in the division who's going to get an opportunity at a title at one point in time. Let's move forward, though, because now Ajit Kabayel, being the victor of this fight, we'll bring him back up a little bit later, because I think I have a great fight for him as well to get involved with in the heavyweight division. Like I said, the way Turkey sets up these cards, he sets it up to where these fights are affecting each other, right? They're in the same division. You got the light heavyweight fight that really had a two light heavyweight fights on the card, obviously one of them for undisputed, and you have two heavyweight fights on the card that both were dealing with interim titles, right? That were going to put those guys in conversations with the Alexander Usyk, who's a unified champion, or a Daniel Dubois, who's a current IBF champion. So let's move forward from there. We got Ajit Kabayel, who's walked away with a victory. The next fight on the card, I believe after the Ajit Kabayel fight, I'd have to say was a Shakur Stevenson fight, a return for Shakur. No, actually, my bad. Let me not even lie to you. The next fight was Hamza Shiraz versus Carlos Adames. Now, going into this fight, guys, I thought, Hamza Shiraz really came in looking like he was the goods, right? Just a talented fighter, tall, knows how to use his physical attributes, knows how to stand behind that jab, had power in both hands, and seemed to have a real high IQ and a patience and poise about him that made him a threat for everybody at 160 pounds. Really just a future of the division. Carlos Adames, coming in from Dominican Republic, a PBC fighter, current WBC champion at 160 pounds, really was an underdog still. Came into the building where Hamza Shiraz had the fan base, had the home field advantage, and Carlos Adames said, listen, man, I'll fight you anywhere. I don't care as long as the pay makes sense. Let's make it happen. And that's what ended up happening. Carlos Adames coming in the shorter fighter, and obviously Hamza Shiraz being who he was, we expected this to be a fight that I was more than leaning toward Hamza Shiraz. If any other fights outside of the Shakur Stevenson versus Josh Padley fight that was on the card, I would say this was going to be the more not 50-50 fight, right? Like close to like a 65, 35 card, type of fight, or maybe even like a 60-40 even, right? Like somewhere in that range. But look, man, competitive fights. This is what happens in boxing. Carlos Adames came in with a game plan, and he wasn't going to see no end that didn't involve him with his hand raised to victory. Started off the fight with the first round coming right across the ring and directly hitting him with a straight right hand right to the body. Boom, let's set it off. Put Hamza Shiraz on notice that this fight was not going to be an easy fight, and that, in fact, that he had plans on being the one to come forward and putting Hamza Shiraz on his back foot the whole entire evening. Now, at one point in time in the fight, you say to yourself, all right, well, Hamza Shiraz must be processing data. By around the third or fourth round, you expect him to start pushing his own offense. Never came together. It was as if Hamza Shiraz was shrinking under the lights and the pressure of the big stage he was actually on. I mean, never got a chance to really get his offense truly going. Always being aware of what Carlos Adames was doing and never implementing his own offensive strategy. Really shrank in front of the lights. Big disappointment. Don't know what his corner was saying to him. I think at one point or another, I heard his corner letting him know that he was ahead on the cards, but he still needed to be vigilant to make sure that he didn't lose his lead. At no point in time did I feel like Hamza Shiraz was in the lead in this fight. It was a horrible showing for Hamza Shiraz. A lot for him to go back to the books, visit the data, do some film study, and he really needs to bite down and show some grit. As Carlos Adames was able to, in my opinion, make this a one-sided affair. But this is where the politics of Saudi Arabia looks like it may have or may have not. It's not pointing any fingers or giving any accusations, but somehow this fight ended up in a draw, right? So Hamza Shiraz walks away without the title, without a loss on his record. Carlos Adames goes home with his title, but has this draw on his record. Now, I guess it could be worse. Carlos Adames could have been robbed, and we could be looking at a WBC champion in Hamza Shiraz, which would be diabolical. A draw still feels doesn't feel right. Feels like Carlos Adames really defended his title and beat Hamza Shiraz, but it ended up in a draw. So will these guys rematch at some point in time? I mean, what does Carlos Adames have to do at 160 pounds that's so important? I mean, you got Erislandy Lara there. I don't think he'd get more money from that fight than he'd get from Turkey to rematch Hamza Shiraz. You got Janibek. I don't think he's volunteering to go fight that. Plus, who has the money to put behind that to make it worth Carlos Adames' true time? I mean, yeah, you could try to unify, but Janibek is really a difficult fighter to fight, real difficult Eastern European unified champion in the division. Maybe we'll see these guys with the rematch down the line and see if Hamza Shiraz could redeem his performance, and if Carlos Adames could push it over the top, convince the judges that he is just the better fighter and walk away with his title the way he would want to, with a win over Hamza Shiraz. We'll see what ends up happening. Moving into the next fight, we have Shakur Stevenson making his return. We all know Shakur Stevenson. Last time he was in the ring, let's see when Shakur was last in the ring here. Shakur was the last time Shakur Stevenson was in the ring? Let's see here. It was July of 2024, right? So, I mean, we're talking about a little over what? July 2025. It was about 9 months, 8 months since the last time he was in the ring. He was scheduled to fight. Shakur Stevenson used to be on Top Rank. We know that. His last fight against Artur Baratunian, where he got an easy unanimous decision there, but ultimately was scheduled to fight William Zepeda at one point or another. William Zepeda said he couldn't make the fight happen because he was having a child. You guys know the story. Ended up going ahead to take a fight with Joe Cordina just to injure himself in camp, and needed surgery on his right hand. Now, you guys remember how Shakur Stevenson's right hand looked after surgery, being at the Ring Magazine gala. We saw Shakur Stevenson with the scars and the bruises, and seeing how his hands looked, and questions that had to be there as far as what was Shakur Stevenson going to look like in this fight? How was his hands going to move in this fight? And did he have healthy hands? This fight right here was supposed to be against Floyd Schofield Jr., right? And one thing that's been going on with Shakur Stevenson, without a doubt, is just the inability to make the biggest fights. It seems like the biggest fights always seem to evade him. They find a way out of it, or he hurts his hand, or they don't want to negotiate and come to the table, or they just don't want to fight him. Some might say Shakur Stevenson is the boogeyman of the 135-pound weight class division, right? I mean, just the way it looks from the outside looking in, just a lot of issues come around whenever it comes time for Shakur Stevenson to put a fight together. Shakur Stevenson now sitting with Matchroom with Eddie Hearn, looking to make his first showcase here. And Floyd Schofield Jr. falls ill, falls out the fight, and is replaced by a fighter who's available in Josh Padley, a fighter who's really a part-time, a full-time worker, a part-time boxer to a degree, however you want to look at it, as he's an electrician for the most part. But obviously he's an undefeated boxer with 15 wins, 4 knockouts, I believe, coming into this fight. Interestingly enough, I think we all knew that Shakur Stevenson was more than favorite to win this fight. This was more of a 70-30 kind of fight, right? Where Shakur Stevenson was heavily favored. But I think more than wondering if he could win or not, that wasn't going to be what the question was going to be with Shakur Stevenson. It was more focused on his hands and to see if his hands were actually going to be healthy enough to compete at the highest levels. Obviously, at 135 pounds, you're thinking about Gervonta Tank Davis, other fighters. Raymond Mortal is in that division, Zoro Abdulev, potentially Andy Cruz at one point or another, who seems to be ranked, have some pretty decent ranking in the WBC as well. So what did we see in this fight? Look, I'll be honest, we saw Shakur Stevenson put on an absolute masterclass in this fight. Just clearly Josh Padley was not supposed to be in the ring with him. And think to yourself, maybe a Arturo Gatti versus Floyd Mayweather kind of energy, if you want to picture how this fight went. I mean, Shakur Stevenson, once he got past that first round and really got the rhythm and processed the data of who was in front of him, Josh Padley, the combination were just raining, hitting Josh Padley with almost every shot he threw at him, just dominating him on all cylinders in this fight. Did seem to tweak that left hand a little bit, probably just tweaking it, hitting Josh Padley the wrong way. But listen, it didn't hurt him bad enough to where he wasn't going to throw that hand. He was connecting with so many shots on Josh Padley. Great body campaign on that fight. Ultimately ended up putting Josh Padley down twice. The first time with the left hand, amazingly enough, right? Was it the left hand the first time? I think it was his left hand the first time, and the second time was a right. He hooked off with a right hand to the body that put Josh Padley down, and he just never recovered and wasn't able to get up from that and make the 10 count, right? His corner just threw the towel in and said, this guy just is not going to be able to weather this. Shout out to Josh Padley for making his last minute move to come and make this fight happen. This guy went into this fight without a camp at all to prepare against Shakur Stevenson. And listen, man, fought his heart out, went out on his shield, stood up, but just his corner did the right thing, I guess, by throwing a towel and said, enough, no mas for my fighter. Shakur Stevenson walks away with a stoppage in this fight. What's next for Shakur Stevenson? I don't know, right? You think Eddie Hearn said that they'd be pursuing and trying to make this fight happen with Gervonta Tank Davis. We'll see what happens. You know, with Tank, it's whatever Tank wants to do. But outside of Tank, you would think he'd probably be eyeballing the winner between William Zepeda and Tevin Farmer, who are rematching after their last fight. We'll see what happens with Shakur. Eddie Hearn just happy to see the kid get busy, make himself some money, be active. This was a big fight for Shakur Stevenson, and he showed improved that he's back. His hands are solid for the most part. He was able to stop the fighter that was in front of him, letting his hands go and throwing heavy shots. He stayed inside the paint, didn't move around, run. Just really just put on a masterclass to show the potential of what could happen when Shakur Stevenson is 100% healthy, right? That's how that fight went. Now, going from the Shakur Stevenson fight, moving forward, we go into one of the fight of the nights that we were expecting to be one of the biggest fights, but this fight also had controversy behind it. Joseph Parker and Daniel Dubois was scheduled to meet up on this Riyadh season card where Daniel Dubois was going to defend his IBF title against Joseph Parker, right? But what ended up happening, Daniel Dubois, just like Floyd Schofield Jr., seemed to have caught a bug out there in Saudi Arabia. I'm not sure if they have like a flu bug moving around there, but Daniel Dubois caught that bug and wasn't able to make the fight. So on the last minute replacement, Turki Al-Sheikh was able to find Martin Bakole to replace Daniel Dubois. Now, this was an amazing replacement, right? You got to think to yourself, Martin Bakole is in the Congo in Africa, minding his business, walking around, probably not in the best of shape as he's not getting ready for a fight anytime soon. I mean, he does have a fight lined up with FA Jogba, which is supposed to be in May, but I probably didn't go into camp for that fight yet. I saw interviews where he kind of said he started at camp, but you know how those interviews are. It was really a little too soon to be in a camp to fight at FA Jogba. But regardless, was able to make an 8-hour flight, connecting flight from Congo to Ethiopia, from Ethiopia to Saudi Arabia to land at 1 a.m, which would be this morning for those guys over there. Landed, was able to hit the scales, came in at 315 pounds. And listen, he's available for an opportunity to put himself in a conversation of getting a title. Took on Joseph Parker. Joseph Parker the day before getting on the scales, weighing on the scales 267 pounds. Kind of heavy for Joseph Parker, but still decent shape for Joseph Parker going into this fight. How did the fight go? Well, it didn't go that long, to be honest with you. Obviously, we know going into this fight, 315 pounds for Martin Bakole. The question had to be as to whether or not he was going to be a shape or not for this fight. If he was going to win this fight, it was going to have to be inside the first 3 to 5 rounds. Anything after the 5th round would be up in the air as far as what you can expect from Martin Bakole condition-wise. But listen, the first round, Joseph Parker was just very cautious of the fighter that was in front of him, really took his time trying to stab him to the body just to see where Martin Bakole's head was at, to see how ready, how that condition was working, how athletic was Martin Bakole going to be able to be in this fight. That first round went down. Second round happened. Joseph Parker came out a lot more aggressive. Listen, you want to get a guy tired, unfortunately, what's going to take, ask G. Cabello, it's going to take activity. It's going to take a little bit of risk, but you got to balance it out. And Joseph Parker did balance it out, right? He meleeed with Martin Bakole, but was sure to pay attention to the power that Martin Bakole had, as he was very dangerous in those first couple of rounds. This is a very dangerous fighter, letting off a lot of heavy shots and combinations, from uppercuts to body shots to hooks. Joe Parker was able to clinch when he needed to clinch, let his hands go when he needed to let his hands go. But in particular, they traded some shots towards the end of the second round where Joseph Parker was able to come over the top with a heavy right hand, hitting Martin Bakole right on the crown of his head, knocked his whole equilibrium off. I mean, it was a bad shot. It looked like he really was knocked off his equilibrium. Got got up to make the 10 count, and something funny happens. Martin Bakoli's team throws the towel in. Now, look, I'll be honest with you guys. Martin Bakoli was really hurt. Could have even been finished by Joseph Parker. But if you think about it and you're watching the fight, there was about 20 seconds left in the second quarter, in the second round. I think Martin Bakoli, there was a good chance, could have made it through the last 15 or so seconds by taking that 10 count and, making it a 15 to 10 seconds left on that clock, that he could have probably made it back to his corner and maybe either recovered or, the corner could have tested him to see how present he was. But they threw the towel in. Listen, easy fight for Joseph Parker, who looked shocked himself with the results of the fight. He walks away with a stoppage on Martin Bakoli, and listen, puts himself in position to get involved in some big fights. Joseph Parker saying he wanted to get a shot at the title. We know that the shot at the title would be against Alexander Usyk or against IBF champion Daniel Dubois. I've seen on X, Twitter, Alexander Usyk tweeting, or was it Ring Magazine tweeting that he had interest in fighting Daniel Dubois, whether he fought Joseph Parker or not. Obviously, we know Daniel Dubois and Alexander Usyk do share some history. A lot of people believe that Daniel Dubois was kind of robbed of an opportunity to beat Alexander Usyk as the mysterious low blow gate, right? Where Daniel Dubois looks like he hit him right on the belt, but the referee basically considered it a low blow and allowed Alexander Usyk to recover, and the fight went on. Ultimately, Alexander Usyk ended up stopping Daniel Dubois in that fight, but the fight has some history to it, and look, it gives Alexander Usyk an opportunity to become a two-time undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, and obviously Daniel Dubois on the other side gets an opportunity at his first shot at becoming undisputed. If that fight truly does come together, where it's Daniel Dubois fighting against Alexander Usyk, who does Joshua Parker fight next? Well, I think it should be Ajit Kabayel, the winner of the Kabayel-Zhilei Zhang fight. Makes sense to me. You know what I mean? Ajit Kabayel now sitting on an interim WBC title. Joseph Parker sitting on the interim WBA title. Either one of those fighters will be a great fight for the winner of Alexander Usyk and Daniel Dubois. And I'll be honest with you, I'm going to be favoring Ajit Kabayel going into that fight. I think he just has a relentless body campaign, great conditioning, real good IQ and understanding of how the human body works as far as being able to set up those shots. 80-inch arm reach, so he has no problem getting to the body. You saw he was able to get to the body with Zhilei Zhang. I think he can do the same thing with Joseph Parker. And in all honesty, if Alexander Usyk has any weaknesses in the game, it's that body campaign, right? He's been hurt before. He got hurt by Anthony Joshua. He's been hurt in the amateurs. He got hurt by Daniel Dubois. He's been hit to the body before and shown that he doesn't like it. Even Tyson Fury at times was able to hit him in the body in their rematch and was kind of effective there, right? Even though he lost the fight. You look at somebody like Ajit Kabayel, he might literally be tailor-made stylistically wise to take down Alexander Usyk. So this guy has to be feeling pretty confident in his ability to beat any of the top heavyweights in the division, just the way that he fights. So I say, let's see Ajit Kabayel fight against Joseph Parker. Let's let Daniel Dubois and Alexander Usyk iron out their differences. And then, the winner of both Joseph Parker and Ajit Kabayel and Daniel Dubois and Alexander Usyk might fight the winner, might fight each other. You know what I mean? Unless Daniel Dubois beats Usyk, maybe there's a rematch there. You know how the politics go. But it looks like the heavyweight division is moving in the right direction, right? Ajit Kabayel, Joseph Parker sounds like a good fight that could be made. And we could take the losers of the heavyweight fights as far as Martin Bakoli and Zhilei Zhang is concerned and have a fight there and let these guys get back into the conversation. The winner of that fight gets right back in the conversation. Martin Bakoli has a right to get another big fight, being that he was a late replacement for Daniel Dubois. Didn't get a chance to have any kind of camp, not even a full camp, any kind of camp to fight against Joseph Parker. A redemption fight with Zhilei Zhang. I'm sure Zhilei Zhang would love to have a redemption fight. The boxing space would embrace the two big guys, the two George Foreman-esque type fighters that they are facing down with each other, would be big puncher versus big puncher. May the best man win, right? Needless to say, Martin Bakoli is still scheduled to fight F.A. Jogba in May. We'll see how that fight goes. I expect Martin Bakoli to be in better shape than he was tonight, probably coming into the ring somewhere about 287 or 290 pounds in shape and ready to fight F.A. Jogba and get himself a victory. We'll see what happens. Now, from that fight, we go into the main event, which is Dmitry Bivol and Artur Beterbiev. This fight right here, a rematch. This is a sequel. The first fight, a lot of people thought that Dmitry Bivol won that fight, right? They thought that Dmitry Bivol did enough. Dmitry Bivol felt like he did enough. But look, we can't cry over spilled milk. The judges gave it to Artur Beterbiev, who became the undisputed light heavyweight champion of the world. And Dmitry Bivol was going to get his redemption one way or another, stating that he planned on doing more in this fight. Going into the fight, what did I think? Going into the fight, I'll be honest with you guys. I thought Artur Beterbiev had a real good chance of winning this fight. Just for the simple fact that Dmitry Bivol did a lot in that fight. There was some things he could adjust on, but I didn't see him adjusting that much more. And him saying that he planned on being way more offensive and just throwing more punches, doing more to make sure that he secured this win. To me, in my mind, it said he was going to put himself in position to be a little bit susceptible to what Artur Beterbiev does best, and that's knock people out, right? And Artur Beterbiev coming off of a knee surgery before, if you're gonna dial back the clock, Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol were supposed to meet up a while back. Artur Beterbiev had an injury to his knee, which made him have to pull out the fight. We saw Dmitry Bivol have a sort of a tune-up fight against Zanad. I can't remember what his first name was, but a fighter by the name of Zanad, who Dmitry Bivol was able to dispatch of, legitimately stop him, right? Coming into that fight, in the first fight, Artur Beterbiev coming off a rehabilitated knee, I thought, okay, well, you know what? Maybe he wasn't as athletic as he could be in that first fight. And although he won that fight, he would come in better, a little bit more athletic, cutting off the ring a lot better, being able to, deliver and set up shots a lot better. And Artur Beterbiev spoke on his IQ being kind of underrated and him wanting to put on a boxing masterclass to show everybody, like, listen, I come from the Eastern European, Russian style of boxing, high level boxing, high amateur pedigree, just like the rest of these Eastern Europeans. I can box with the best of them. And I said to myself, you know what? When I seen Artur Beterbiev fight against, let's say, Caleb Smith, I seen a higher IQ than I think most people understood that he had, cutting the ring off on Caleb Smith, making the ring a small place, and ultimately stopping Caleb Smith, right? That being said, the fight goes in. Dmitry Bivol comes in, very athletic, good movement, but for the most part stood right in front of Artur Beterbiev and was getting the best of a lot of the shots. Now, I think that Dmitry Bivol did real well on those shots when he was trading off with Artur Beterbiev. Then for the middle rounds, really moved around a little bit more, wasn't as offensive. I was thinking to myself, maybe he was a little tired. Maybe he was getting, the tires running a little flat, because Artur Beterbiev was doing a great job cutting off the ring and connecting with these right hands. He was walking Dmitry Bivol towards his right, cutting the left path off Dmitry Bivol and kind of forcing Dmitry Bivol to move to his left. Artur Beterbiev's right, had him running right into a lot of right hands from Artur Beterbiev. At times in the fight, it looked like Artur Beterbiev may even been hurting Dmitry Bivol. But looks like Dmitry Bivol might have been playing possum, because the second latter half of the fight, I would say from round 7, 8 and on, Dmitry Bivol began to jump right back into his athleticism, letting off punches, level changing on Artur Beterbiev, able to move, make Artur Beterbiev chase him around instead of having Artur Beterbiev cut the ring off. It was actually a boxing masterclass. Cerebral assassin in Dmitry Bivol strategically made sure he won the first half of the fight, like the first 3 to 4 rounds, and then turned up the last 3 to 4 rounds took of the fight, and ended up winning the fight pretty convincingly. I think most people would have had it more like an 8-4 or 7-5 for Dmitry Bivol. He won the fight with a majority split decision, Let's see what the score was, because it was kind of diabolical. One of the scores, let me see here. Let's see here. One of the scores are pretty crazy. I'm not gonna lie to you. Hold on a second. Okay, let's just do it like this. I don't know why this is causing a problem. There we go. Oh, Dmitry. I was spelling his name wrong. Sorry about that, Dmitry. We had the scores here. It was 115, 113, 116, 112, and then we had a 114, 114. That was actually somebody who said it was a draw. I really don't think it was a draw at all. Like I said, this was a 7-5, 8-4 match for Dmitry Bivol, really showing, just the strategy and the cerebral aspect of the game. This game was just a chess match from first round to the 12th round. Artur Beterbiev, of course, giving Dmitry Bivol his rematch and giving him an opportunity at redemption. Turkey plans on doing the same thing for Artur Beterbiev at this point. Now that they're tied up, Dmitry Bivol has a win, Artur Beterbiev has a win. Dmitry being the light heavyweight undisputed champion of the world, Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry will probably be meeting up again. Now, David Benavidez was outside this fight, watching for the results of this fight, as he wanted to challenge the winner of that fight to get his opportunity at undisputed. But I'm sure he understands the way this worked out with Artur Beterbiev taking that loss and giving that rematch to Dmitry Bivol. They're expecting a trilogy. What does David Benavidez do until then? Well, he has options, right? One of the biggest options that he has that seems to be right in front of him is to take that fight with Caleb Smith. Caleb Smith now sitting on an interim WBO title. David Benavidez sitting on an interim WBC title and an interim WBA title. Or does he step up and go to cruiserweight, as he's mentioned he was looking to do before, to fight Zurdo Ramirez, as Zurdo Ramirez is now a unified cruiserweight champion? That puts David Benavidez in a position to not only become a unified champion, but also can go ahead and unify and head into being undisputed at cruiserweight, fighting the likes of a Jai Opatai, and I can't quite remember the IBF champion up there right now at this moment, right? So I'm not going to break my head trying to remember that. But what does David Benavidez do? He came out to Saudi Arabia. He had to know that it was a possibility that Dmitry Bivol could win this fight, and if he did, it'd be a trilogy. So you think naturally the order of events would be that he would fight a Caleb Smith, meaning that Caleb Smith holds another one of those interim titles. We'll see what he does. As I saw Turki Al-Sheikh kind of comment on David Benavidez, basically stating that he wanted to give him an opportunity to become undisputed, made a statement on the microphone calling Al Heyman out to come together. Let's see if we can cross promote and put this fight together. No doubt David Benavidez, being loyal to the soil of the PBC, letting Turki Al-Sheikh know that, listen, I'm a PBC fighter. Al Heyman would have to agree to it. And, Turki, of course, open to it. The question is Al Heyman or the representatives of the PBC open to cross promoting to give David Benavidez an opportunity to become an undisputed champion at one point or another, right? We have to see what ends up happening. But that's how that plays out. Man, at the end of the day, to sum up this whole entire card, I know it was a lot of information in somewhat of a little bit of time, but it was a great card, right? I mean, we saw controversy. We saw a lot of bad things in omens come over this card, where it seemed like they wanted the card to fall apart. We seen Floyd Schofield catching illness. We heard about allegations coming from Schofield Sr. About foul play and poisoning happening and creams being put on Floyd Schofield Jr. that made him sick. He ultimately ended up retracting a lot of that, being that it sounded like a lot of far-fetched propaganda, but more importantly, fell under a lot of defamation suit type of situation. So he had to clear that up, and he did. We saw Daniel Dubois get sick and get pulled off this card. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the show came full circle, and it was a great show. To be honest with you, very competitive card, a lot of great fights on that card. A lot of things are going to move forward in certain directions based off the result of that card. And we got to see what's going to happen for the rest of the year, right? Great card. You guys let me know on the comment section, what was the fight that most impressed you? What would you like to see happen next with these fighters? David Benavidez in the conversation now. You see what's happening with Joseph Parker and the Martin McCauley situation and the Ajit Kabayel and Zhilei Zhang situation, with Daniel Dubois being sick and not being able to compete, but still being an IBF champion. Looks like it's going to prolong Joseph Parker's shot at becoming a champion, but he has to stay busy. So is he going to fight Ajit Kabayel? Is that a legitimate fight for him to unify some interim titles until the Daniel Dubois, Alexander Usyk situation figures itself out? Or does he take a hiatus from the sport, wait for Daniel Dubois to finish his business with Alexander Usyk and try to get the winner of that fight? And what's next for Ajit Kabayel? Now that he's an interim WBC champion, Turki Al-Sheikh making it a point to represent his best interest, getting him in the biggest fights he can get him into. What's the best fight for him if it's not going to be against Joseph Parker? And is Zhilei Zhang and Martin McCauley on a road to clash at some point in time, being that they're both coming off losses, even though Martin McCauley has a fight lined up for May against F.A. Ajagba? Maybe Zhilei Zhang retires at this point. 41 years old, man, been in it for a while. You can't do this forever. And he just got stopped for the first time. Maybe he retires, right? Who knows? Let me know what you think. We're going into the following week, March 1st. We know we got the Tank Davis against Lamont Roach card. Honestly, a fight that I'm looking forward to seeing is Gary Antoine Russell versus Rayo Venezuela, El Rayo Venezuela. Very interested in seeing that fight for a WBA. What is that? A light welterweight title, 140-pound title. Very interested in seeing what Rayo Venezuela is able to do with Gary Antoine. Gary Antoine really being blessed coming off of a loss against Alberto Puello. Coming off a loss, going directly into another title shot in a sanctioning body. I don't even know if he was ranked that high in the WBA sanctioning body. I mean, we got to kind of talk about that. I mean, why is that happening? Seems kind of unfair to a degree to Rayo. I don't know if that even makes sense, but just seems like Gary Antoine came out of nowhere. We were expecting a rematch between Rayo Venezuela and the Isak Pitbull Cruz. That never came full circle. I don't know, man. I don't know. It just looks kind of weird, but it is what it is. Still should be a competitive fight. We got a new Rayo Venezuela in the building with Robert Garcia, who showed and proved that he can have wrinkles to his game against Isak Pitbull Cruz, getting ready to fight against a Gary Antoine, definitely hungry for a title shot as well as some redemption, looking to unify, as Gary Antoine said, if he beats Rayo Venezuela, to go ahead and unify the 140-pound weight class division. And, that's always good stuff to hear, right, in these divisions. But you guys let me know what you think again. Once again, thank you to all my subscribers, man. You guys are the best. Got a bunch of new subscribers this time around. Welcome to the family. You guys comment as well. Guys, remember to hit the like button on these videos. It helps it get in the algorithm. Subscribe if you're not subscribed yet. Hit the bell icon so you guys are getting alerts when all the content is dropping. I appreciate you guys, man. It's been a blast. And at this point, we out.